everybody, welcome to Lycan's Arcane Mage. Right now, just about to do a time trial using this combination of stats of 64.7% mastery, 3.4 versatility, 12.75 crit, and I have some minor stats from gear into Haste. Most of it's from my stuff, but I think I have some hands, like wrists over here that give some more haste. Well, the goal of these videos is to try to locate the perfect mastery amount to sustain an endless burn cycle. As right now I think I've already hit it, it's time for me to begin to reallocate, redistribute stats, just so that I'm barely mana starved by the time my evocation cycles run out. Of course, I'm trying my best to give some wiggle room for haste or bloodlust effects, stuff like that. Also, here's the trial for this run. I'll pop out my talents later and show what traits I got.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I went a little OM for a bit right there. This could either mean that I need more mastery, or that just that 200 haste stat or 1% haste compounded itself. Could just be that I was pretty unlucky with missile procs. But then again, I did just switch out a relic. I got this relic instead of missile proc chance, and with, let's say, 5% extra, I wouldn't run out of mana, but somehow I just did. Yeah, I mean, this is totally a work in progress, but if you can, do try to get extra missiles from your relics. They really go a long way in extending your mana pool. Oh, anyway, my general trait path, I went from Mark, Might of the Guardians, Arcane Explosion damage. I got the Arcane Missile damage traits. Got Arcane Explosion radius. This is extremely useful for dungeons and whatnot, even in raid fights, like scenarios where you try to cleave as much as you can. This utility trait really shines, and I recommend that you take it. I took Arcane Power extension just because it was a more viable path than taking Arcane Barrage damage in this build. I also took the slow utility, but that was much later. From the Arcane Power buff, I got the Evocation Explosion trait and went for a Mana Shield straight into Rules of Threes. Got the Missile proc chance. This really helped with mana just from the extra missiles that I got. Went to get crit for its flat damage output, and what I'm going to get next would be Blasting Rod, which is Arcane Blast damage. Now, if you look a little closely at this fight, there was a reason why I chose straight crit over Arcane Blast damage. As you can see, in that 250k DPS run, Arcane Blast dealt about 38%. It's less than half, which means each point that I put into Blasting Rod improves my overall damage output by less than a percent. Whereas if I invested it in crit itself, it would tend to be around almost 4% increase damage just from its procs. So just going over my talent picks real quick. This is the recommended talent path for going for an endless burn phase. You really want Words of Power for the extra cheese. Nether Tempest is also a good skill because of both its mana cost, its damage, as well as the fact that it has a chance to proc missiles. Now, the thing about Nether Tempest is that by casting it with 4 charges, it deals more damage than a single Arcane Blast over the course of 12 seconds. With recent patch changes, however, there is no use in spamming this more than once in a row, as only fresh applications have a chance of proccing missiles. So one way to do this, if you really wanted to cheese this, would be to constantly switch targets for that chance to proc the missiles. As you can see, I'm getting fresh applications and I'm getting missile procs, so if you're really low in mana, you could probably use this in an AoE fight or 2 boss fight. Of course, you'd want to try to keep your stacks by using Arcane Explosion as well, and offloading your missiles on high priority targets that need to be burned down. So, I used to run Enchantress Flow, however, Rune of Power, when Blizzard does tuning for these things. They tend to factor in cost time. Right now, you want to try to buy as much cost time as you can because of the soft mastery cap you're trying to reach. That is a no barrage phase. By casting Rune of Power, you buy yourself 1.5 seconds while giving yourself insane utility by boosting your damage by 50%. This is good because you can align this with Arcane Power itself, flat 30% damage increase and 30% mana conserve. Now, for the 60 set talents, I went full cheese and got Supernova. Well, we could actually get charged up. This reduces for our opportunity to cast Supernova 4 times within, or well, 3 3/4 times in a full evocation cycle. That buys you about 3 global cooldowns worth of time. And with this mastery build, you're just trying to stall for as much time as you can. As the higher your general haste or the more costs you get out, the more you need to push your mastery up. Therefore, at plus 5% missile chance, I would recommend that you get 65% mastery and 0% haste to just find that cap. Of course, once you find this cap and you find that you have leftover mana in your evocation cycle, you want to start dumping mastery or pumping haste. Although right now I don't recommend pumping haste except for with Lust legendary ring. If you can get Sepha's secret, you might want to boost your mastery up as much as you can with crafted gears. It doesn't matter really if they're like 835s. In this case, an 835 with the socket for a cape gives more stat than an 850 without a socket. I know it's strange, but at this point you just want to do your best to hit the soft mastery cap. Of course, then you can begin to diverge as you find that soft point, start getting gear at higher eye levels with multiple stats, preferably with sockets, as those really help you get more gear flexibility by freeing up mastery. Oh, continuing on with what I was saying about Supernova though, the fact that it can cast it 4 times, deals half the amount of damage as an Arcane Blast, and it can proc missiles as well, so it isn't that bad talent. Whereas for Charged Up, if you saw my run prior, I was forced to cast Barrage as I ran out of mana. By using Charged Up, number 1, you can start the fight immediately, pre-pot at range, and deal much more damage. Number 2, if you do need to cast Barrage, this Charged Up nullifies or lessens the effect of, dropping your charges. Before an evocation cycle, I still don't recommend using Charged Up or Barrage if possible though, as that these result in DPS losses. This can be simply overcome by either getting really high missile proc chances or by extending your mana pool with mastery, or say the 5%. Let's see. There is a necklace, I think, in one of these dungeons that give you extra mana. Yeah, here you go. Something cheesy like this. Although the sets aren't too perfect unless you can get this to proc at 880. You know what, scratch that. 5% does equate to a fair amount of mana, or well, mastery, but it doesn't increase your regen, it just increases your capacity, which is an alright necklace to have. So yeah, in a nutshell, these are the general basic talents you want to pick for an endless burn mastery build. Now, it's a whole different story if you have, let's say, a magic kill, the legendary for that, because this barrage that you cast will regenerate you a fair bit of mana and extend your pull. So if you just have this, for example, you require much less mana to pull this off. In that instance, I would also recommend that you pick up Charged Up. It gives you like a burst 40% if you chain cast this on Barrage's cooldown of a couple seconds, 4 seconds. Alternatively, if you do get like Time Warping, you really want to get more mastery to compensate for having extra haste. If you get these two conserving or sustain legendaries, however, these are really good because they just let you drop mastery and pick up another stat altogether. So yeah, I would recommend if you get more than one to just go for these sustain legendaries, at least until T19 drops. Now, operating at full mana efficiency or an endless burn, right now it seems like it requires quite a fair bit of mana or mastery. This is definitely subject to change as we progress. However, if you do get used to this playstyle, you might find that it's quite an enjoyable playstyle to do once we get used to Quickening's pretty strange mechanics. Well, that just about wraps it up for this time trial single target session. I'm terribly sorry that my damage just got split right there into a separate instance. I don't know what happened back there. Well, personally, with this being my first voice intro and guide so far, I'd like to personally thank all of you who have been following and who've had interest in the mastery build in general. And definitely tune in for more videos. Try to make it as enjoyable and fun as I possibly can. I'll be posting more Mythic Plus runs as I got a pretty nice guild group to run them. We've been getting 3 chest runs with access time on +2s and 3s. Definitely gonna push over the weekend for the highest possible tier that we can get. That's just about it. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and have a good night. Signing off.